Welcome. So glad to see all you guys this afternoon. Thank you for showing up. I won't say getting in the first, but you did that already. But you're showing up, and that's the most important thing. Because you're showing up for yourselves. And we're very fortunate to have someone like Mark Dolan to share his knowledge and experience and information that we can all learn from. Mark Dolan, time-tested mastery. Before I get into that a little bit, I would like to welcome our guests that we have this morning, or this afternoon. Well, guests and, well, new agent, Christy. Thank you guys have just recently joined us. And Virginia, who will be joining us shortly. And then we have a couple of guests with us. Patrick Lane, a lot of you. Yes, everyone knows Patrick. Patrick moved back up to Big Bear recently, and he's just walking away, just walks everywhere, and just getting into his fitness. And Patrick is a broker. And Patrick wants to stay involved. So I said, come on over, get involved with us. And Joe Ferraro is his nephew, in case anyone didn't know that. So I think Patrick's going to be working along with Joe a little bit. So then we have Eric, who is a guest, and he is looking to get into the real estate business, and he is checking out the possibility of joining us here at RE/MAX. So with that being said, back to Mark Dolan, our star speaker of today. Mark had an idea. It started with he had an idea that he wanted to do something. Is that me? Yeah. What's it doing? Mark had an idea. And his idea is that he wanted to do something to share all that he had experienced and learned throughout his career. He started approximately 40 years right here in Big Bear with Tim Wood. It just gives me chills. You know, the history and, you know, everything that the people that we have had the pleasure and the privilege of being associated with, just right here in our little old town. So Mark is becoming a nationally known name. No, he just said he had an idea. He started learning how to do what he wanted to do, and he's doing it. So there you go. So congratulations, Mark, for accomplishing something that you decided you wanted to do. And thank you for being here to share with us. So with that, let's welcome Mark Dolan, our esteemed broker. You know what we have
Tell me, can you all hear me? Because I really don't want to use that. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Okay. So, well, thank you for the introduction. Makes me a little bit emotional, and you know, to think about, you know, my history here. I was driving up this morning at 5 a.m., coming up the backside from the desert, and thinking about riding my bike up that hill from the cement plant to Big Bear when I was training, and riding centuries and everything. It also reminded me of some trips that I did about 40 years ago when I was sort of like Eric. I had just gotten my real estate license, hadn't started anything, but I had moved to Big Bear and I was still working for a company in Los Angeles. It was called Everfresh Foods. They delivered dairy products to all of the major stores every year. Dairy Fresh, Everfresh. So you might have seen those products. And I was loading trucks, and what was happening at the time was they were moving their plant from downtown LA to Ontario. And I lived in Downey at the time. So I thought, well, I could drive an hour from Downey to Ontario and live in that crazy place down there. Or I can move to Big Bear and drive for an hour and 20 minutes to work. And I thought, I'm going to move to Big Bear. And that's how I got to Big Bear. So I was going to commute for an hour and 20 minutes down to Ontario. But for the first 6 weeks before they moved the plant, I had to go into LA, and I started at 4 a.m. So that meant I had to leave a little bit before 2 a.m. here. And I was new to Big Bear, and I was living out in Shea Meadow, for those of you that know where that's at. And so I would drive down Highway 38, leaving at 2 in the morning. This was in February. So maybe a week into this drive back and forth, one day was particularly foggy, one of those days when you're going up and down the hill, and all you can see is maybe 40 feet in front of you. You guys ever had that experience going up and down the hill? And I had 2 hours to get to work, and I wasn't familiar with the drive, and I didn't want to be late, so I'm going about as fast as I can possibly go. Guess what? I saw Bambi's butt in front of my car, and I had that much before I hit it. Now, thankfully, Bambi was running away from the car when I hit it, so it really didn't do a lot of damage to the car. You know, when I got to work, I found a bunch of hair on it, and there wasn't really any damage to the car, so I thought I was unscathed. Right? So I started leaving, maybe 10 minutes earlier, so I wouldn't have to hurry as much the next time. So a couple of weeks later, I'm driving down. It's not foggy, thinking I'm just doing fine. And as you go around that last hairpin turn before you go to the flats into that one long area along the creek there, there's a couple of rises that you go over, right, in that downhill. So I come over that rise, and there's a guy coming up, and he's got bright headlights on, and I can't see. And as soon as he goes by me, guess what? I see Bambi's mom and dad. This time I hit Bambi pretty good. And had a little bit of damage to the car, and so I was not happy. I'm thinking, oh my God. You know, I moved to Big Bear. I'm driving down to LA. I mean, I don't know what to do, so I got to work, and my supervisor was in the room, and I said, you know, I don't know what to do. I said, you know, it's been 2 weeks, I've hit 2 deer, and you know, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And he looked at me and he said, Mark, he said, have you ever considered slowing down? I had not. I had not considered slowing down. So why do I tell you that story? Because we're all the same.
We're all in a hurry.
We're all in a hurry, that's one thing, but we're all the same. And so often when we come up with challenges in our lives that are distressing to us, we never ask for help. And the people that are away from us or outside of us can look at our situation a lot more clearly, and sometimes the answer is very, very simple. So I want you to write down at the top of your paper, ask for help. Ask for help. Be willing to ask for help. The second thing that I recognize in remembering that story is that quite often the simple solution and the only solution to our problem is to change our behavior. And I believe that's one of the reasons why we as human beings don't solve our problems, because the last thing that we look for to solve our problems is to change our behavior. I think that's an important point to think as we go through these points today. I feel sort of bad for all of you because you guys are going through this change, and I'm sort of semi-retired. You know, I'm not actively selling day to day like I used to. But I remember what it was like to start. I mean, I was learning things all the time. And right now, you guys have to still be learning and changing because our business is under attack. It's not only competitors that are trying to underprice you, but Zillow is coming from your business. Redfin and their new affinity program with lenders is coming for your business. Everybody wants to be where you guys are. They want your customer. And they want to sell you your business back. Right? They want to. I was thinking back to, Tim Wood had built a brand here in Big Bear that, he was spending $100,000 a year in advertising when $100,000 was like $1 million. He was spending a lot of money. And he built a brand so when people came to Big Bear, they knew who he was. Not one of us in here can build a brand as big as Zillow. They're always going to be in the middle of what we're doing. Right? They're always going to be. Realtor.com is always going to get more traffic than we do. So, what is the solution? The solution is in the relationships that you have with your clients. A lot of you have gone through the Buffini class, right? How many have gone through that? It's all referral based. It's all about the relationship that you have with the customer. And I believe that that is the future of our business, and the way to make those relationships that you have work for you is to be more valuable than Zillow, to be more valuable than Redfin, to be more valuable than Rocket Mortgage. And the only way that you can do that is by building up that person that you are, by bringing value to your customers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Why do they have access to our list?
I can't answer that for you in this class. Yeah, and it won't do us any good to figure out why. It won't help us to know why. All we have to know is what we need to do about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all we need to do is do something about it. So the last word that I want you to write down on your sheet at the top is leverage. Leverage. Everybody knows what a lever is, right? Leverage means that you gain power by using a tool that gains power. And so the 21 things that we're going to talk about today are leverage to your personal development. Okay. So we're going to be talking about skills that will pay you forever. Skills that will pay you forever. If we do one advertisement that runs for a little bit, that might work for a day, a weekend, or a month. But when we invest in ourselves and we build a skill, that is something that will pay off for a long term. And so I got this 21 list from, actually Mike Ferry talked about it on one of his Mike Ferry TV episodes, but it originally came from a lady named Tracy Stein, who is a real estate broker in Orlando, Florida. So I want to give credit where credit's due. She wrote the list, Mike Ferry talked about it, but I'm going to be talking about it more from a Big Bear real estate market perspective. So I'm going to give you the quote so you can write that in, and then I'm going to share with you some thoughts and ideas about this. So the first point, skills that will pay you forever, is the ability to sell and to negotiate. The ability to sell and negotiate. Mike Ferry's example of selling is influencing thought. It means that you are helping your people gather information to make a decision, and you're guiding them along that process. It means that you have influence. It means that you're able to make a positive help to the decisions that they're making. But selling is very, very complicated. There's lots of parts to it. And the first step to it is to build rapport, which is another word for trust. We have to have rapport and trust with people to be able to have influence with them. We have to understand what their motivation and what their goals and what their desires are. I recently did an interview with Christy, and she pointed it out to me, and the thing that I sent her had 30 questions to it. There were questions about her. Why would my sales presentation as a coach be 30 questions about her? It's because the solution is about her goals, her needs, her desires, and what she wants. And it's the same thing with all of your customers. If you want to be successful in sales, you have to learn how to do that, and that means that you need to know everything you can about your customer and how to help them. Make sense? Negotiating also is a skill, and these are not only for a salesperson, but how many, if you're married, you're negotiating with your spouse all the time, right? I'll do the dishes if you take out the trash, right? I'll go mow the lawn if you go do the grocery shopping. Mowing my lawn takes 3 hours. And I love every minute of it. So it doesn't matter whether you're a real estate salesperson, whether you're a spouse, whether you have children, whether you're a leader in your church, it doesn't matter what you're doing in life, is if you are living and around other people, it pays you to be able to have sales skills. And so it's worth a study. Point number 2. The ability to convey what you think and feel. The ability to convey what you think and you feel. I highlighted excellent communication skills. Self-awareness. Using appropriate vocabulary. I really want to talk about that one. How many of you have ever seen somebody that is really struggling? They've got a problem, they're in pain, and they're not doing well. Consider this. I can say it 2 ways. Mickey, what's wrong with you? Or Mickey, what's troubling you?
You look terrible, Mickey.
Are you tired?
Self-awareness, appropriate communication skills, appropriate words. The things that we do when we have self-awareness is we want to be able to convey to other people what we feel. Now, I'm concerned about Mickey. I want to know what's troubling her. But the words that I use and the way that I approach her is going to be very, very important. How do you think that would work with your spouse?
We would have some fighting words.
I mean, it makes a difference. So this is a skill that will pay you dividends over your life. The ability to convey what you think and how you feel in an appropriate way. Number 3, the skill to be able to break a process down into smaller steps. The ability to break a process down into smaller steps. This has some really good real estate applications to it. The real estate business is pretty complicated. If you're going to sell real estate in high production, it means that you're going to have a lot of listings. You're going to have a lot of transactions. I mean, a successful real estate career is not 3 transactions a year. What would your definition be?
24 transactions.
24, okay.
Ask me the question
Ask another question. Rachel, what's your definition of a successful real estate career annually?
Outdoing yourself from the year before.
Doing yourself, okay.
Yeah.
Every year, right?
I think it's hitting your goals or coming close to hitting your goals, because success is different for every individual, so it's not necessarily a number of transactions as to where it is your personal goals, because everyone has something different going on in their life. So maybe success is 10 transactions because you're just getting started, you're trying to learn, or maybe it's 50 transactions because last year you did 40.
Okay. The number might change. Here's my challenge with it, is if you do 3 transactions a year, you can do 3 different transactions every year, and you can't do 100 if you make it up every single time you go. So when you are doing a real estate transaction, whatever your process is, you want to be able to break it down to steps that are repeatable and duplicatable so that you can do it over and over and over again the same way. Here's a good question. Do you want your airline pilot to make it up as he goes, or do you want to follow the checklist? Do you think your clients want you to make up the new list every time, or do they want you to follow the system? It's complicated. And as your business grows, you want to be able to do it over and over so it's duplicatable and it's repeatable. But then if you decide that you want to grow, then you're able to teach those steps broken down to a staff member that can do them for you to help you build your business. Does that make sense? So it's important to be able to break down these tasks into things that are repeatable and able to be done over and over again exactly the same way. Okay? I know this is going to get a big reaction. Number 4, the ability to shut up, listen, and learn from others. Some of the thoughts I wrote down: your ego is not your amigo. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. I love this from Bill Young. I'm not learning when my mouth is open speaking.
So true.
Face it, everyone loves to hear the sound of their own voice. The best gift that you can give your customers is to let them speak. And to listen, and be interested in them. Same thing with your spouse, same thing with your kids, same thing with your friends. Right? More sales are lost because we talk too much than talk too little. I don't think there's any argument about that, and yet we all do it. I do it. Next, number 5, the ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome obstacles. John Carmody has a quote from Lombardi, Vince Lombardi, that says, doing your best isn't enough. You have to do what's required. You have to do what's required. Things almost never go exactly as planned, which requires us to think. Everything changes. The market conditions change. Customer attitudes and behaviors change. Technology and the tools change. So each of these things requires us to improvise and adapt in real time. I'm trying to think of a good example. Have you ever heard the example of the real estate agent that has 20 years of experience, but it's really 1 year repeated 20 times? Yeah. When I started prospecting 40 years ago, there were no cell phones, there were no answering machines. People were home eating dinner typically. You guys are all laughing. I know I'm old. There's something good about getting old. You get wiser. And people were home from 6 to 7, typically eating dinner. And I like to cold call. Well, I don't know that I like to cold call. I just did it because I didn't have any other way to make money. So I would go into our office at 6 p.m. and I would put 50 pennies on top of my desk. And I'd pick up the phone and I'd say, "Hi.
Hi.
Is this Mickey?
Yes, it is.
Have you sold your home in Big Bear yet?
No.
Have you been thinking about it?
No.
Thanks for your time," and I'd hang up. I got the decision maker, I asked her a question, and I got the truth. She wasn't interested in my service. There was no reason to keep talking, and I hung up. She didn't even know who called her. Why would it matter if she knew who called her? Why would it matter? Doesn't matter. We can't do that anymore. We can't do that because, number one, if you call people from 6 to 7, you'll never talk to them. Right? So we have to prospect differently. So that, that's one example. Let me see if I can come up with another example of the ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome. Market conditions change. I'm hearing this a lot. I have listings that aren't selling. Who's got listings not selling? Okay. What are you doing differently? Besides waiting.
I moved around some furniture, added some different bedding, gonna have pictures retaken.
At risk of
Lower the
maybe
price.
lowering the price. So I've been through 4 or 5 markets like this. And I remember working, and a lot of the stuff I get from other people. Tim Wood told me, I had a listing that hadn't sold and I was impressed. And I said, I'm taking these listings, I should be working with buyers because I'm taking these listings and they're not selling. And he said, well, what's going on with this one? And I said, it's not selling. And he said, so what are you doing about it? I said, I don't know. I said, they were listed at this price. I told them that they reduced to $20,000, it would sell. I thought it would sell, it didn't sell. And he says, well, have you ever thought about calling him up and saying, I made a mistake? I made a mistake. I thought $125,000, 4 years ago, $125,000 was going to get sold. I made a mistake. If you want to sell it, we need to lower the price again. We need to have the courage to have those conversations. We didn't have to do that in 2020. We didn't have to do it in 2021. So we have to have the ability to adapt and improvise and change as other things change, like market conditions. Next point. The ability to read, to understand, and to memorize. This is important. The ability to read, to understand, and to memorize. Now, I know there's podcasts out there, and I know there's all kinds of things, everything's video now, but there is something good about reading. You've heard the phrase, all leaders are readers. If you want to be a top person, you have to be able to read. You see, they don't have a video for a purchase contract. It's a document. You have to read it. Your clients have to read it. One of my big pet peeves as a broker is the agents don't read the contracts. They don't know what the people are asking them to sign. And I know we've talked about this before, is to read the contract and be able to understand it so that you can give the short version. This is what this paragraph means. This is what that paragraph means. Here's the implications of that paragraph. So you have to be able to read, understand, and memorize things about the contract, but also your sales scripts. Okay? When do you plan on moving? How long have you lived at this address? If you were to move, where would you move from? And when would that be? Obviously, you realize it could take 6 to 9 months in this market to get a home sold. Did you know that? So my question is, do you want to be sold in 6 months or 9 months, or do you just want to be starting at that time? Obviously, you realize it can take 6 to 9 months in this market to get your home sold. Okay? That's a Mike Ferry script that I learned 40 years ago. Why did I memorize it? Because I didn't want to sound like that crappy salesperson that's speaking a script. I didn't want to be the terrible telemarketer that was calling me on the phone and reading a script to me over the phone. They kept reading when I said, hey, I'm not interested, and they keep reading. Right? If you want to become professional in this business, this is a skill that will pay you for the rest of your career. Memorize your scripts. If you memorize your scripts, you'll be able to listen when they're talking back to you. Oh, I like this one too. Number 7. This one might be the very best one. The ability to walk away. The ability to walk away. How many of you guys are tired of chasing business? Chasing it? Chasing people that are running away from you? Right? How about the people that you're supposed to be representing that are negotiating against you? How fun is a real estate career with clients that aren't working with you? You're supposed to be on their side and that they're fighting with you. How many have clients like that?
I don't know.
Do you know what? Well, how many of you get rid of them? Once I get
I think it depends where you are, because there's always the prideful, stubborn side where you're like, man, I put so much work into you, I want you to pay me for it, like, I'll tough it out, I guess, for a little bit.
the ability to walk away. I know you guys have heard the phrase commission breath. Commission breath repels clients. And if we're being treated poorly and we don't walk away, that's sending a message. It's giving them permission to treat us that way. Lose-win deals, you know, when you win a listing but you lose, it robs you of your future financial success. It robs you of your time with your family. It's a major component into the mental health crisis amongst real estate people. We don't need toxic clients or people. There's another part of it too, which is that some people are negotiating all the time, and they will negotiate with you until you say no. And when you say no, they'll stop. Only you can decide when you say no, no more. You have the ability to walk away. And there is a secret to having more ability to walk away, and it's to prospect more. It's to prospect more. If I have more clients, I can get rid of the lousy ones. If I don't have any clients, I gotta keep them all. Okay. Number 8, the ability to manage time effectively. I wrote down we all have the same amount of time. This is probably the most important point under this. Good time management is often more about what we don't do than what we do. Reminds me, there's 2 types of activities. There are stress-relieving activities, and there are money-making activities in real estate. Talking to people, talking to prospective clients is a money-making activity. Prospecting, doing a presentation, talking to a coworker at the coffee machine is a stress-relieving activity. Surfing the internet is a stress-relieving activity. Okay? So a lot of times time management is about removing the stress-relieving activities, especially when we get into the time-wasting part. One of the things that Sarah talked about in her podcast recently I really liked was time blocking. She's taken that principle that we've talked about and she's implemented it into her business. So it's important. I mean, I used to have this really bad habit every day of going to the mailbox when I worked here. When I was living here in town, I would drive. It was a stress-relieving activity to drive down to the post office and burn a half an hour driving to and from the post office to pick up my own mail. I didn't have to do it every day. Right? But I did it. Okay. Time blocking, eliminating interruptions. Gosh. You know, the best thing that you can do for your coworkers is to not be an interruption. Another idea about effective time management is working when you're fresh and productive. How many people are morning people?
What?
Morning people. Yeah. So make sure you work early in the morning, which makes it really tough for me on the East Coast because it's like early afternoon for you guys and I'm toast. You know, I'm up at 2 a.m. your time, so if you want to call me at 2 a.m., I'm awake. Number 9, the ability to stay positive and optimistic. Life is difficult. 95% of all news media is negative. We can combat them with positive affirmations. We can combat that with news diets. A lesson that I have had a long time learning is to make things fun. Make things fun. Tim didn't teach me that. He was always I'm very intense, and so that's one of the things that I have not learned about, but it makes life better when you do make things fun. Right? Telling a joke here, having a little bit of fun in the process. One of the things that, and I'll go into prospecting with this, is because when you are doing lead generation and prospecting, most people don't list their property with you when you call them. I would say it's probably 1 out of 10,000 do, right? So why do we do it? Why do we do it? We need more ways to win. Okay? If I call Mickey and she says, I want to sell my house, that's a huge win. I'm really happy that that happened. But I know it's probably not going to happen. So I'm going to ask her if she's interested so I can work with her in the future. And maybe that's a possibility of a win. Maybe she knows somebody else that wants to do business and she's willing to give up their name and give me a referral. That's a win. Right? The last thing is that I can make fun, have fun, and make a friend. I didn't hear that. I'm not sure I wanted to hear that.
Well, I muted my phone, but my watch is, I can't mute my watch. I can go to my phone.
Technology, yeah. Okay, so to stay positive and optimistic. Positive affirmations work. Every difficulty that we have has an opportunity in it. We can always be a part of the solution. Lots of good things about staying positive and optimistic. I mean, once our head's in the trash, the rest of it's gone. Next point. The ability to make decisions based on facts, not emotions. So those of you that read my newsletter yesterday, Feelings Aren't Facts, that was the one I got the most comments from. Of all the things that I've sent out, I got a couple of people that reached out and commented on them. I learned that a long time ago. Feelings aren't facts. When our emotions are out of control, we tend to do things that don't take us towards our goals, what we're trying to accomplish. The first thing to do is to step back so that the stress is not there, to regain our composure, okay, and to analyze and figure out what's really going on with the situation. It feels really good, for example, we were talking about the toxic people. It feels really good to tell a toxic person off, doesn't it? Anybody ever done that? It feels really good to do that. How many of us made money from that? Sometimes what feels good ain't good for us. Yeah, that took me a long time. Mary, a lot of you know that took me a long time. But we want to make our decisions based on facts, not emotions. The fact is right now is that less homes are selling. They're on the market a lot longer. Those are the facts. Okay? And so if we know it takes more listings to make a sale, set a goal to go get more listings. If you want 3 or 10 or 15 or 25 or however many sales, and last year you're able to do it by taking 20 listings, but it's not going to happen this year, go take 40 listings so you can reach your goal. That's the facts. You have to make your business decisions based on facts, or else don't plan to spend any money this year. That's the other option.
Because you won't have any to spend.
Here's a good one, number 11. The ability to speak in front of a large audience. Now remember, these aren't just for real estate. These are principles that will pay you for the rest of your life. When I went to Toastmasters in 1997, it was because I knew if I could sit across from one client, I could make one sale, but if I was in front of 500 people, I could make 500 sales. Now, how many sales presentations do you think I made in front of 500 people in the last 20 years? Not too many. What am I doing today? 29 people? Okay. I've spoken in front of groups that had 500 people. They're usually funerals, though. Which is nothing. The ability to speak in front of a large group of people. It's one of the greatest fears in life is to stand up in front of people and speak. First time I did it, my hands were sweaty, my eyes got real blurry. There was this dark circle that came in, and went like this, and I couldn't see anything. I mean, I'm sitting there shaking and sweating, and and all nervous. It was in front of a Toastmasters group, and after I was done, all the feedback was positive. I mean, feelings aren't facts. So once you get past that, the confidence that you have speaking in front of a group of people will make you more powerful in every single opportunity that you have to sell or to communicate with people. Number 12, the ability to keep trying even after failure. Wrote down, Thomas Edison failed 100 or 1,000 times trying to perfect the incandescent light bulb. Lincoln failed 11 times in businesses and elections before winning. We've all heard the proverb, fall down 7 times, get back up 8. Failure is never final until you stop trying. It's never final until you stop trying. I think that's one of the things I'm grateful for is that I might quit for a week. I'm beat up, I quit for a week, but I always come back. The next one, 13, put a star next to this one. The ability to invest money in myself.
That's easy.
I'm not talking shoes. I'm talking skills. The ability to invest money in yourself. It's interesting, as I read an article yesterday that talked about the people in Switzerland, how their net worth is like 4 or 5 times more millionaires per capita in Switzerland than there is in the U.S.
Not only that, but they're the happiest country.
They're the happiest country.
Yes, they are. They're the number one.
Why is that?
Well, I can tell you, but I'm gonna piss a lot of people off here, so I'd rather not tell you.
Okay, don't tell me. I'll tell you about the article there. They talked about home ownership. They talked about doing things differently. One of the keys is they talked about investing in themselves, in their education. But they do things that are different. They do things like they use different banking institutions for different purposes. So they will have a bank for investment. They'll have a bank for their personal use. They also invest globally rather than just in Switzerland. I mean, it was really sort of an interesting article about how they do things differently. But what I picked up on was that they invest in themselves. See, once your mind is expanded with a new idea, it never goes back to the same size. We're always willing to pay Zillow for more money for leads or an advertisement so that they can put a glossy thing, out there for people to look at. But once that paper rots, it's gone. But when we've invested in ourselves, we carry that with us the rest of our life. And not only if it's a skill that we learn, think of the skill I learned of prospecting 40 years ago. That's changed, but I've built on it. It's changed, but I built on it. If I never learned it in the first place, I couldn't have built on it. So invest in yourself, and even if that skill wears out like AI and some of the other stuff that we're doing, it continues, it keeps going, but you have to build on it. Okay? So invest money in yourself. I think Warren Buffett had a quote about that too, is the best investment you can have is to invest in yourself. Next one. Ability to do things irrespective of the situation. I'm going to write that down, or I'm going to give it to you straight. The ability to do things irrespective of the situation. Here's what I really mean. Successful people do what they should do. Anybody know the rest of it? When they should do it, whether they feel like it or not.
Say that again?
Successful people do what they should do, when they should do it, whether they feel like it or not. I don't feel like going to work today. I don't feel like changing the oil in the car today. The ability to do things irrespective of the situation. That person's rude, so I'm not going to be kind. To do the right thing irrespective of the situation. I heard that a long time ago. I'm surprised nobody else finished that for me. Successful people do what they should do, when they should do it, whether they feel like it or not. It takes a lot of discipline to adopt that. Number 15, the ability to self-analyze. Anybody into self-analysis? And I mean this in a healthy way. I mean it in a healthy way. I know that there's a lot of people that are in a mental loop that's not real healthy. That's not what I'm talking about. The ability to self-analyze. One of the things that I would share with you about self-analysis is that you should have a trusted person that you can talk to and say, hey, I'm on the track here.
Like a coach.
A coach, a coach, a spiritual advisor, somebody that you trust. I mean, I've told myself a lot of lies and believed it for a long time. We don't want to go down that road. But we do have to be able to self-analyze. Journaling is a good thing. We should always be subjective about others. And what I mean by that is, I was thinking a lot about this in Tim. I talk about Tim a lot. Is people would, whenever Tim would hear somebody bashing somebody else, if I was criticizing, and I hate to say this, but if I was criticizing my ex-wife at the time, when I first met Tim, he said, I heard she speaks highly of you too, Mark. It only took me about 6 or 7 times to stop bad-mouthing my wife to Tim. or anybody. But we want to be subjective about other people, to judge them based on the possibilities of their context of what's going on in their lives. You've heard that phrase, don't judge another man until you've walked a mile in his shoes. So we need to be subjective with other people and probably a little bit lenient because we don't know what they're going through. But with ourselves, we know what we're going through. We can be a lot more honest with ourselves and be a little bit more demanding of ourselves. Of all the criticism that I have done of other people, my life never got better from sharing it with them. The only time my life ever got better is when I gave myself the business, not you.
Can I add something to that? So I think also is knowing when, after several burnouts, and realizing that every time I get into a burnout, it's harder and harder to pull myself out. It's knowing those signals so that when you have to take a deep breath and maybe step away so that you're giving yourself that self-care, you can do that to avoid burnout.
Yep. How long have I known you?
15 years probably.
See, getting older does have its benefits. Let's wait till you're 62. Okay. The ability to self-analyze. What else did I write down here? Relentlessly enforce your standards on your own performance. The ability to be honest with yourself. Learn to identify how you feel. Sometimes that takes a while. Number 16. The ability to learn how to learn. The ability to learn how to learn. Does that sound weird? There was a book that Jim Rohn recommended a long time ago. The book was titled, How to Read a Book. That was the title, How to Read a Book, by Mortimer Adler. How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler. The dang book is this thick. And it talked about how you read a book and you learn. Remember we talked about memorize, the ability to read, to understand, to memorize, and to remember? Okay, there's things that we can do that will allow us to learn. Now, what's Brian Buffini's favorite line? Affirmation, or it's not affirmation. Information?
Education without implementation is mere entertainment.
Yes, nailed it.
So say that again, education without implementation?
Is mere entertainment.
I mean, think about what that really means. The ability to learn how to learn is that, if we read a book and nothing changes, if nothing changes, nothing changes. What do we do? If nothing changes, if we don't change our behavior. So, this idea came, I just read a book from Don Shula, and he said, it's about changing behavior. You haven't learned anything if the behavior hasn't changed. You've been entertained, right? You've been entertained. So we have to have the ability to learn how to learn. Learning means that you're changing behavior. If your behavior isn't changing, you haven't learned anything yet. There's another phrase that I like, and it comes from a guy named Father Mike Schmitz, who does a couple of books, a Bible in a Year podcast and a Catechism in a Year podcast, and he said, this isn't about information transfer, this is about transformation. It's not about anything. He says, Mark, I don't want you to get information. I want the information to transform you. So our training and our learning and our reading should be transformational in a positive way. In a positive way. Number 17, the ability to understand how other people feel. So the big word is empathy, and it goes back to that little thing that I did with Nikki, where I said, what's wrong with you versus what's troubling you. The ability to understand how people feel. And this is particularly difficult for real estate agents that have been around for a long time. How many more water heaters do I want to fight over? Not one. I don't want to hear about the $800 water heater or $1,800 water heater. I've negotiated $10,000. But for the customer that you're working with, it's the only water heater that matters to them. And so often the conflicts and the trust problems that we have with our customers is because we don't get into their shoes and recognize that their emotions tied up in this transaction are what matter, not ours. We have to have that empathy. So if you have the ability to understand how people feel, it helps you in your business, but it helps you in your family and with your children and your wives. People like working with people who get that. Another good book, I keep talking about it, is the Full Fee Agent talks about that a lot. We've all heard the phrase, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. True story. People buy for their reasons, not ours. In recovery circles, it talks about, to talk about alcoholism, because most people either know an alcoholic, almost everybody does. It says, the person that needs help with alcohol doesn't want to be lectured to, doesn't want to be talked down to, doesn't want to be chastened by anybody over it. But when they talk to somebody that truly understands, once that connection is made, everything changes for them. But until that connection is made, nothing can be accomplished. Nothing can be accomplished. We've all dealt with people that have had drinking problems, and you can talk their head off and nothing changes until you make that connection with them. If you can take that principle to your clients and make that connection with them, you'll have a lot more power with them. Number 18, we're getting close. The ability to remain consistent. I know I'm talking a lot about business, but it gets into everything. You are not your goals. You are the sum of your habits. Right now, who you are is the sum of your habits. Actions have consequences. If you're consistently inconsistent, there's consequences for that. We become what we repeatedly do. You're hearing a lot about this right now. Is the stock market like stability? Right? Everybody's talking about the tariffs and it's going up, it's going down. Trump says this, it goes up. Trump says that, it goes down. And all of the analysts are saying the market likes stability. Well, people like stability too. They'd like to know what they can count on. And if you say, I'm going to show up for work every day at 9 a.m. and you only do it half the time, guess what? What you're doing is what you are. Okay? You will get a lot more repeat and referral business and a lot more trust when people know what you say is what you're going to do. In fact, when Tim hired me, and I interviewed with him, I asked him at the very end of the conversation, I said, what do you expect from the agents that work for you? And he says, I expect you to do what you say you're going to do. Can be tough. Number 19, the ability to master your thoughts. We've already talked about positivity versus negativity. We become what we think about most of the time, Earl Nightingale. We do have to have the ability to master our thoughts. And I liked what Jessica said, is that when you have a pattern of things going on and you start to recognize the triggers, you can get in the way of it sooner and come out of it. I just lost a thought. It was a thought I had and it came and it went. Hopefully it'll come back. The ability to master your thoughts. I love affirmations. You know, this is interesting. So I'll go back to this. And, you know, right after I started working for Tim and learned about affirmations, I would hold open houses. How many people walk into open houses in a 4-hour open house? How often are there people there versus people not there? 80% of the time? So the house is empty 80% of the time. What do you guys do when the house is empty?
Do videos, social media.
Okay. So you're doing something. Anybody sick? You do nothing?
Never. I clean.
You do an open house at my house.
Well, I'm glad you guys are all doing something. So, you know, my behavior when I was doing open house, I mean, now you have to go back. This was before social media. It might have even been before I had a cell phone. Okay, I mean, this goes back. I mean, I would pace around the house every day. In every way, I'm getting better and better. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. I would say it 50 times. If it's to be, it's up to me. If it's to be, it's up to me. In 10 years, I'll be a millionaire. Took longer than that. Did I believe it when I first started saying it? No. I was $20,000 in debt to the IRS. Couldn't sell my way out of a cardboard box. Okay? But I wanted to. I worked at it. You have to have the ability to master your thoughts. And you can't let the negative thoughts run around in your brain and expect it to be different. Mike Ferry talked a lot about taking mindset breaks during your day. If you work an 8-hour day, every 2 hours, pick up an inspirational book, and for 10 minutes, read the inspirational book. I think Zig Ziglar called it doing a checkup from the neck up, kind of thing. You know, you have to have the ability to master your thoughts. Best way I know to master your thoughts, and I've started doing this again, is to read your goals every single morning when you get up. Number one reason we don't reach our goals, we forgot them. It's the crying kid, the barking neighbor dog, those damn people on Fox News, whatever it is. We start thinking about everything except what we want. Discipline is remembering what you want. Number 20, the ability to write words to persuade and influence others. Now that might seem exactly the same as the ability to sell. And it might sound exactly the same as getting up and talking in front of a large group of people. And it might sound a lot like number 2, the ability to convey what you think and what you feel. But when you write words to persuade and influence others, you create things that are lasting, intellectual property. Probably the biggest thing that you can do with your writing is to do a blog, so that 24/7 you are influencing the world. So I am worldwide because I have a blog. I am. Okay. So when you're able to write and convey your thoughts and be persuasive in writing, you're able to do things that will work for you when you are not awake. That's leverage. That's leverage. Yeah, I wrote down you can communicate outside of real time. That's a good thing. So we are at the last one. The last one, number 21, the ability to ask for help. Oh, trying to think of it. Well, so here's the not safe for work one, sort of ask. ASK is an acronym. It stands for an Ask Saving Kit. That's what it is. You know, we can't save face and our butts at the same time. You know, ego is the there's a good thing about having a healthy ego, but you know, our greatest asset a lot of times is our greatest. It's our greatest failure as well. Is that, you know, when we, you know, I'm reading, I think you guys read the thing I said about Aristotle, reading Aristotle. Did you guys read that blog yet? Any of you guys read that? Every single thing that we do, there is a best place in the middle, and there is a vice that is too little of it, and a vice that is too much of it. Having healthy self-esteem is good. Having low self-esteem is bad. Being an egotistical monster is bad. You know, so there is this, you know, there's this sort of a spectrum where our egos are supposed to be. And so we need to be careful of it. And the only way that we can properly align that is to talk with people that we trust. I think looking good is overrated. Although a lot of people do, you know, want to do that. Our ego prevents us from asking people questions. You know, and that's a major barrier to learning. And finally, about, you know, asking for help. You know, in order to sell effectively and build rapport with other people, we really need to ask our customers what they want or how we can best help them. One of the best questions I like when I'm talking with a buyer or a seller is, how do you want me to communicate with you? what's the best, is it text, is it email, is it over the phone? What's the best way for me to help you? If we ask people, they will tell us what they want. And if we ask people how they feel about us, they'll tell us what they want. It's really important when we're struggling to ask for help. I learned this sort of in a weird way up at Cedar Campground up there. I was doing a kids retreat for one of the youth groups up there. And they did this exercise where they taught all the kids how to chop wood with an axe. Anybody chop wood with an axe? Few. Well, these were like 13-year-old boys. Some of them where their legs were longer than their real gangly kids, hardly lift an axe. But the exercise was, one person would show and demonstrate and teach to another kid to chop the wood or the log. And then that person would teach another, and the other person would teach another. And the whole point of the exercise was how hard it is for human beings to learn from each other because we would rather YouTube it. We can YouTube, we don't have to talk with people. So the greatest thing that you can do is ask for help from other people and to offer help to other people and have a relationship with them. In the age of AI and with technology, the things that are going on today, the only thing that AI can't replace is the human connection. And the easiest way to do that is to say, I'm here to help you. Do you want me to help you? No. The easiest way to build a connection with somebody is ask them for their help. Because it opens the door to the relationship.
And it softens people too.
So that's what I have for you all today. 21 skills, and if you work on them, they'll pay you for the rest of your life, in and out of your
Do you remember our conversation at the post office? How many years ago? 8 to 10 years ago?
It was longer than that. It was 11.
11 years ago?
So Simeon is really happy that you wasted all that time going to the post office.
That is interesting.
Is that a good point?
Was it a money making?
You did not realize it at the time.
No, well, it was a stress relieving activity for me, and it ended up being a money making activity because Simeon was prospecting. And we got into a conversation that led to our moving into the next family.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.